Mark Methabane, The Kaffir Boy, is an autobiography telling the story of Mark's escape from life in the apartheid in South Africa through education and sports. It's about a family who lives in a hard time called Alexandra. Johannes, also known as Mark, changed his name so he could fit in with the white people. Although black South Africans had endured racial oppression for almost 300 years, this political system was an especially intense form of racial oppression. Blacks were crowded into reserves, where land was poor quality and where there was no industry or natural wealth. Mark suffers hunger, witnesses violence, and learns to hate and fear whites. Pangs of hunger melted my resentment of my father away, and now that he was gone, I longed night and day for his return. I didn't even mind his coming back and shouting restrictions at me and making me perform rituals. I simply wanted him back. And as days slid by without him, as I saw other children in other company of their father, I would cry. His absence showed me how much I loved him. I never stopped asking questions about when he would be coming back. Methabane 10. There are many significant events that stick out in this story. One significant event is when Mark leaves the gang. Mark was in a situation that changed his life from there on. He participated in a gang fight and saw a boy lose an eye. This experience showed Mark that this is not what he wanted to be a part of. He might bleed to death and he would be one-eyed for the rest of his life. Those thoughts numbed me. Then and there, I decided to quit the gang permanently. Methabane 196. Another significant event in this story is when Mark begins school. Even though he wasn't fond of going to school, he was forced by his mother and grandmother to get an education. In result of attending school, he graduated in the top of his class and had the highest marking. He said, "Teachers began saying great things for me. Some said I would make a great teacher. Others maintained that I had the brains to become a doctor." Methabane 197. As the book continues, Marcos discovers his talents through tennis. At first it was just a hobby until he was evaluated by a man that goes by the name Colored. Colored was one of the best tennis players among people of color in Johannesburg. He was the start of Mark's tennis career. Sekamorche turned out to be not only a good coach, but a confident and a surrogate father. Instead of teaching me his style of play, which would have been easy for him to do, he let me acquire my own. Methabane 215. As a result of Mark being so talented with tennis and book smart, he began to receive scholarships from colleges. Later on, when Mark had a decision on where he wanted to attend, he packed his bags and said his goodbyes. The one thing that stood out to him was that his father showed affection as he was leaving. He noticed that after all what his dad did, he still loved him through thick and thin. "Take care of yourself, son," he said softly. "I will, Papa." Tears began to roll down his hollow cheeks. My father was crying. After 18 years of knowing him, he was, for the first time, crying. He's human after all. He loves me. Methabane 347. The theme throughout this novel is sacrificial love. Sacrificial love is a self-sacrifice worth the pure motivation to alleviate the suffering of others, which is what Mark's mother exemplified throughout this novel. She tries her hardest to enroll Mark in school, knowing she doesn't have enough money to do so. "Why don't you get a job and help me keep your brother and sister in school, my child?" Methabane 107. Mark knew that his mother was working so hard for her children. Even when she was ill, she hobbled to work and worked 110%. His mother made tremendous sacrifices for the family, which created health problems for her, but all she wanted was the best for her family. The current event article is an interview on Methabane's views of American racism in Time magazine. Between the current event article and the apartheid in South Africa, much has not changed in people's hearts. Methabane states in the article, "Having lived in South Africa and the U.S., I think that racism will always exist. For one reason or another, there will always be people who are driven by fear, who deny the humanity of others." Methabane. Society was constructed around the rigid concepts of race and the practice of keeping races separated. In The Kaffir Boy, Mark states, More than 90% of white South Africans go through a lifetime without seeing firsthand the human conditions under which blacks have to survive. Methane 4. Referring back to the article, Methane states that he was shocked in discovering the black world in America resembled the world he left. The townships of South Africa, the poor buildings, the bad roads, the hopelessness, the rage, the frustration on the faces of the black boys and girls I met. Methane. The Kaffir Boy connects to this because Mark says, like most shacks in Alexandria, had no heat, electricity, or plumbing. We had no stove, so my mother had to keep the brazier indoors, as she had done all previous winters. Methane 80. Mark's thoughts on the apartheid was, can't we black people make our own laws? Alexandria is our world, isn't it? And white people have their own world. My conception of the world of life was in racial terms, and that conception was not mine alone. It was echoed by all the black people I had come across. Methane 116. He learns that even though white and black worlds are separate, the white world still dominates and has control over the black world. Likewise, the article states, over the past 25 years, the wealth gap between blacks and whites has nearly tripled, according to the research by Brandeis University. Methane.